You say you want peace, but your choices say otherwise. You say you're tired of being hurt, yet somehow, your hands reach back for the same pain, dressed in a different face. You say you're ready to move on, but your heart still finds comfort in what broke it. And I get it, because that ache inside you, it's not just emotional, it's familiar, it's home. Sometimes pain isn't just something we endure, it's something we return to, not because we want to suffer, but because something in us believes we deserve it. This isn't about logic, this isn't about intelligence, this is about the silent child in you, the one who once made sense of chaos by calling it love. So you learn to chase what didn't see you. You learn to earn warmth. You learn to be okay with almost. And now, every time something soft knocks at your door, you don't trust it. You wait for it to leave. You even push it away just to be right about being unlovable again. No one tells you that healing is not just about letting go of the past. It's about letting go of the version of you that survived it. Because that version, she's still running. He's still proving. They're still scared to rest. If you've ever asked, why do I always end up here again? Maybe the answer is this: because part of you still thinks love must hurt to be real. But here's a quiet truth no one teaches you in school. Until you heal, you will keep choosing pain that feels like home over peace that feels unfamiliar, not because you're broken, but because you're loyal to the version of love you were first taught. And it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility now to see it, to name it, to change it. So if this video finds you tonight, maybe it's not a coincidence. Maybe it's the universe saying, it's time to stop proving your worth. Time to stop rewriting old stories with new people. Time to stop bleeding for what never tried to hold you. Let this be the start of something softer, something quieter, something more true. And if these words feel like they were meant for you, that's because they were. If you feel seen, if this touched something tender in you, subscribe to the channel. Not for the numbers, but so you know where to return when the world forgets how to speak your language. Breathe with me. Now we begin. Sometimes, healing doesn't begin with a decision. It begins with exhaustion, with a moment so quiet, so stripped of noise, you finally admit you're tired of hurting like this. Not the loud kind of tired, not the dramatic declarations, but that deep, bone-weary ache that whispers, I can't keep doing this to myself. It might happen on a Tuesday, while you're folding laundry and your chest tightens again, or while scrolling through old messages, searching for signs that maybe you weren't crazy. It might happen while watching two strangers laugh, and realizing you've forgotten what safe laughter sounds like, and no one sees it, no one claps, but something inside you shifts. Because in that quiet surrender, you finally stop defending the pain. You stop saying, they didn't mean it. You stop pretending your boundaries were too much. You stop carrying someone else's inability to love as proof that you're unworthy. That's how it begins. Not with a scream, but with a silence that finally tells the truth. But healing? It's not a straight line, it's not clean, and it sure as hell isn't pretty. One day you'll feel strong, untouchable, like you've finally let it all go. The next day, one song, one smell, one text will pull you back to your knees. And that's okay, because healing isn't about deleting memories. It's about learning not to live inside them, not to replay them every time something feels uncertain. You may still miss the person who broke you. You may still reach for their ghost in moments of weakness, but you'll stop inviting them back in. You'll stop begging the past to love you better. You'll start giving yourself the kind of care you once begged from others, and that's when it changes. When the pain doesn't vanish, but it stops being your compass. When love stops meaning, let me suffer quietly so you'll stay, and starts meaning, let me be seen even when I'm messy. You'll lose people. Oh yes, people who are only drawn to your wounds, not your wholeness. But you'll also gain something, a steadiness, a soft certainty in your own skin, a voice that doesn't shake when you say, no, this doesn't feel like love. And that's not small, that's not weakness, that's power. Real power is knowing you could beg for crumbs again, but choosing to wait for bread. Real power is sitting in loneliness without crawling back to what cut you. And real healing is this: the day you stop chasing what hurt you and start nurturing what's been quietly waiting inside. The part of you that always knew you were meant for more than survival. You used to call it love, didn't you? That ache in your chest, the racing thoughts, the constant worry of being too much or not enough. You called it passion, you called it devotion, but deep down it was fear. Fear of losing, fear of being abandoned, fear that if you stopped trying, they'd stop staying. So you became good at reading the room, but bad at listening to yourself. You mastered the art of shrinking, of smiling through hurt, of justifying neglect with, "They're going through a lot." You gave, and gave, and gave, until your hands were empty, and your soul was hollow, and they still said you weren't doing enough. But love, real love, doesn't feel like that. It doesn't make you question your worth every night. It doesn't leave you guessing. It doesn't punish you for having needs. You weren't asking for too much. You were asking the wrong person because they couldn't meet you where you were. Not because you were high maintenance, but because they were low capacity. And the little one inside you, the version of you that once begged for affection, still whispers, "Maybe if I just love harder, it'll work." But you can't heal what refuses to be held. You can't pour into someone who keeps poking holes in your cup. You can't build connection on the quicksand of inconsistency. Here's a truth that stings, but also sets you free. Not everyone you want is capable of giving what you need. And when you stop confusing intensity with intimacy, you begin to breathe again. You begin to see that peace isn't boring. That calm doesn't mean cold. That someone making you feel safe doesn't mean they're unexciting. It means they're stable. There's a version of you, quiet, steady, powerful, that is waiting for you to stop chasing storms and start walking towards stillness. And the more you heal, the more boring becomes beautiful. No more decoding mixed signals. No more sitting in rooms where your presence feels like a question mark. No more proving, performing, pretending. You're not here to earn love. You're here to receive it. Freely, completely, softly. But to receive that kind of love, you must become it first. Not for others, for yourself. Because the day you choose yourself, with the same intensity you once chose those who hurt you, that's the day everything begins to shift. You might not notice the shift at first. It doesn't always come with fireworks or some grand epiphany. Sometimes it's subtle. You speak up instead of staying silent. You leave the room when the energy feels wrong. You don't reply to the text that used to make your chest tighten. You start hearing your own voice again, the one you buried under everyone else's needs. And it's not loud, but it's clear. You begin to recognize how often you used to bend just to be kept. How many times you mistook chaos for chemistry. How long you stayed in rooms where love felt like a transaction. There's a grief to this kind of growth, because you're not just letting go of people, you're letting go of old versions of yourself. The version that tolerated too much, that begged for the bare minimum, that stayed quiet so others could stay comfortable. You'll miss them sometimes. Not the people, but the feeling of being needed, even if it came at a cost, even if it drained you. Because when your identity was built on overgiving, rest feels wrong. Silence feels like abandonment. Receiving feels unsafe. But keep going. It gets quieter. And then it gets better. You'll stop checking your phone every 5 minutes. You'll stop explaining your worth to those who never tried to understand it. You'll stop trying to prove that your heart is a home, because now you know it island. And the right people won't need convincing. They'll feel it. They'll respect it. They'll meet you there. And when they do, you won't have to become smaller to make room for them. You'll expand. Together. But before they arrive, and they will, you have to meet yourself. Not the mask, not the fixer, not the chameleon who adapts just to be loved. You, the one underneath the fear, the one who just wanted to be held without having to earn it. You are not too much. You are not hard to love. You are not a burden waiting to be tolerated. You are a story that was never read properly, a song played in the wrong key, a soul taught to whisper when it was meant to sing. You don't need another person to rewrite that. You need you, to stop apologizing for your softness, to stop shrinking just to fit inside someone's comfort zone, to stop loving others more than you protect yourself. This isn't selfish. This is sacred. Healing is sacred. Choosing peace is sacred. Being alone and not lonely, that's sacred too. So if no one ever told you this, let it be said now. You are allowed to want more, to ask for softness, to require honesty, to walk away from almost love. You are allowed to choose differently now. There will be days when the loneliness feels louder than your progress. Nights when you'll wonder if choosing peace was worth losing the ones who made you feel seen. even if it was only halfway. You'll sit with the quiet and mistake it for emptiness. You'll reach for your phone just to remember what it felt like to be needed. Not loved, needed. And that's where the confusion lives, doesn't it? Because sometimes being needed feels like love, when you've never known the difference. But needing you isn't the same as choosing you. And wanting you isn't the same as valuing you. You learned that the hard way. So now, you sit in the ache, not to suffer, but to stop escaping. Because every time you filled that silence with noise, you missed the voice trying to guide you home. The one that says, you're doing it. You're breaking the cycle. You're not begging anymore. You don't have to numb it this time. You don't have to run. Let the ache come. Let the tears fall. Let the past knock. But don't let it in. Because here's what the pain won't tell you. It's not trying to hurt you again. It's trying to leave. It just doesn't know how to go quietly. And you are learning to love without losing yourself. To stay soft without becoming a sponge for everyone else's wounds. To hold space for others without collapsing your own needs to do it. That's not cold. That's clarity. You were never supposed to carry all of it. The moods, the triggers, the weight of someone else's unhealed story. You were just the one who kept showing up, even when they didn't. Even when it cost you your peace. And maybe that used to make you feel strong, but now you want something else. Not the high of being needed. Not the thrill of being chosen temporarily. You want to be loved quietly, fully, consistently. Not because you're perfect. Not because you bent into the shape they preferred, but because you stayed true to yourself. You're not asking for magic. You're asking for presence. You're asking to be seen when you're not performing. You're asking to be loved when you're honest, not when you're easy. And if they can't give you that, then let them go. Not with bitterness, not with fire, but with a whisper that says, I'm finally choosing me. There's a kind of freedom that doesn't feel like freedom at first. It feels like loss, like silence, like an empty chair where someone used to sit, like walking past places that still carry echoes of a laugh you used to live for. It feels like waking up and not checking your phone because you know there's nothing there but ghosts and guesses. But this is the beginning. Not of forgetting, but of remembering yourself. Because for too long, you've been building your worth in the eyes of people who couldn't even see you. You measured your value by how needed you were, how much pain you could carry without complaint, how many chances you could hand out before you disappeared. You became everything for everyone, except you. And now, in this quiet, you're finally learning how to return home to yourself. Not through noise, not through chaos, but through stillness. Through the moment you say, I miss them, but I miss me more. Through the breath you take before responding to someone who once made you shrink. Through the smile that returns, not because someone gave it to you, but because you chose it. Healing is not about never hurting again. It's about no longer confusing hurt with love. It's not about building walls. It's about building doors and deciding who gets to come in, who gets access to your softness, who gets a seat at your table, because not everyone deserves it. And that doesn't make you cruel. That makes you wise. You're not here to be consumed. You're not here to prove that you're easy to love. You're here to be held in the full spectrum of who you are. Your light, your shadows, your silence, your fire. And when you stop settling for people who only show up when it's convenient, you make space for someone who shows up because it's hard, because you're worth it. Because love, real love, isn't afraid of the messy parts. It walks in, sits down, and says, I'm not going anywhere. But first, you must say that to yourself. I'm not going anywhere, not when it's hard, not when you backslide, not when the old wounds whisper lies. Stay, choose you, again and again, until it stops feeling strange to be your own anchor. Because that's the truth, isn't it? No one else can love you in the places you refuse to see. And once you do, once you look at your wounds, without shame or apology, they start to lose their power. They stop being the reason you settle, and they become the reason you rise. Maybe no one ever told you this part, that healing can feel more painful than the hurt you escaped from. Because when you finally put down the armor, you feel everything you've been carrying for years. Not just the heartbreaks, but the self-abandonment, the silencing, the moments you swallowed your truth just to be chosen. And when it hits, it doesn't come gently. It comes like a flood. All the words you never said, all the tears you never cried, all the parts of you that had to grow up too fast because love was something you had to earn. And it's tempting, in that moment, to go back, to reach for the familiar pain, to text the one who never really saw you, just to feel something again. Because when you've spent years in survival mode, peace can feel like a void, safety can feel foreign, self-worth can feel like arrogance. But stay, just a little longer. Let the discomfort speak, not to shame you, but to show you where the wound still lives. You're not broken for craving connection. You're not weak for missing what wasn't good for you. You're just human, and the body remembers. But now, you are learning a new language, one where love doesn't arrive with conditions, where presence doesn't depend on perfection, where silence doesn't mean punishment. You are reparenting yourself in the softest way. By not betraying your gut, by not chasing someone to prove you're worthy, by not turning pain into identity, you are becoming the kind of love you always needed. And it's hard. Gold, it's hard, but it's real, and it's worth it. Because one day, maybe not tomorrow, but soon, you'll look at yourself in the mirror and see someone you recognize, someone who no longer flinches at kindness, someone who doesn't apologize for asking to be met fully, someone who walks away when respect is absent, not out of spite, but out of deep reverence for their own soul. And that moment, that's the moment the healing becomes visible, not to the world, but to you, because now, you're no longer performing for love, you're embodying it, not just in how you treat others, but in how you finally treat yourself. There's a stillness that settles in when you stop proving your worth. It doesn't come from applause. It doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from finally realizing you were never meant to beg for the very thing you give so freely. You loved hard. Too hard, maybe, because you thought that love was measured in sacrifice, in patience that had no end, in staying longer than your spirit could bear. But now you know better. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's erosion. And no one tells you how slowly it happens, how tiny the pieces are that you give away, until one day you look around and there's almost nothing left. That's why healing feels so raw, because it requires you to rebuild with hands that once only knew how to give away. But you're learning how to say no without guilt, how to choose silence over explanation, how to protect your peace like it's sacred. Because at Ireland, you'll notice it in small ways, like how your chest doesn't tighten around their name anymore, how you stop romanticizing the chaos that used to keep you feeling alive. You'll laugh again, not the polite kind, but the kind that surprises you, the kind that says, maybe I'm not broken anymore. And you'll stop craving closure from people who were never open in the first place. You'll realize that the apology you waited for won't fix the things they never tried to understand, that the ending you imagined was only a fantasy of who you hoped they'd become. But more than that, you'll stop blaming yourself for loving them, for staying, for trying so damn hard to be enough. Because it was never about not being enough. It was about offering gold to those who only ever knew how to hold sand. So now, you hold your own gold. Gently, reverently, you speak to yourself in ways you once begged others to speak to you. You soften without crumbling. You shine without explanation. And when love comes again, because it will, you won't lose yourself to it. You'll stay rooted, and anyone who wants to stand beside you will have to meet you there. In truth, in steadiness, in depth. Until then, you walk alone, not because no one wants you, but because now, you finally know how to want yourself. You start to see things differently when you no longer look through the lens of desperation. You stop asking, why didn't they love me? And begin asking, why did I keep trying to prove I was lovable? And that's where the power returns. Not in anger, not in revenge, but in clarity. You see how often you settled just to feel wanted, how many times you mistook their silence as mystery, their indifference as strength. But now you know, real strength shows up. It listens, it stays. You start to notice the red flags, not as warnings, but as exit signs. And you no longer shame yourself for walking out when the energy turns sharp. That's growth. That's self-trust. And it didn't come easy. You bled for this version of you. You cried in quiet places. You made decisions that no one clapped for, but you did it. You chose yourself. Even when it hurt, even when you doubted, even when your past tried to pull you back into the arms of a love that never learned how to hold. You learned to stay through the loneliness, until the loneliness started feeling like freedom. You learned to rest without guilt, to desire without begging, to exist without shrinking. And maybe for the first time, You no longer need someone to complete you. You just want someone to meet you, whole, present, human. You no longer want fireworks that burn out by morning. You want a fire that stays, even when it's not exciting, even when it's quiet, even when you're not easy to love. Because you've learned, you are not here to be impressive. You are here to be honest. So you let go of the stories that told you to suffer, of the patterns that kept you small, of the people who only loved the version of you that never said no. You're rewriting the way you show up now. You don't hasse. You don't explain. You don't plead. You observe. You discern. You choose. And what a beautiful thing it is to be chosen by someone who doesn't require you to abandon yourself to be loved. But until then, you walk with yourself, hand in hand, wound in one palm, power in the other. And you whisper, I'm proud of you. Not for being perfect, but for finally being free. It's strange how healing doesn't always feel like progress. Some days, it feels like standing still. Other days, it feels like slipping backward. And then there are days when you feel nothing at all, just a quiet kind of numbness, like your heart is tired of hoping. But even then, you're healing. Because now, you don't run from the emptiness. You sit with it. You don't fill the silence with people who don't understand your language. You protect your quiet. There was a time when you would have reached out to someone just to not feel alone, even if they weren't good for you, even if their love came with conditions. But now you know, being alone isn't the same as being abandoned. You've abandoned yourself far too many times, just to keep others comfortable. Not anymore. Now, you pause before responding. You listen to how your body reacts. When a conversation doesn't feel safe, you leave when the room feels heavy. You choose yourself even when no one claps. And in that choosing, you grow. You realize you don't want a connection that starts fast and ends in confusion. You don't want intensity that leaves you questioning your worth. You don't want half love wrapped in sweet words. You want truth. Steady hands. A voice that doesn't rise when you ask for softness. And most of all, you want peace. Not just from others, but from yourself. To wake up and not feel like you have to earn your right to exist. To walk through the day without apologizing for your needs. To fall asleep without replaying conversations in your head, wondering if you said too much, felt too deeply, loved too hard. Because now you know you were never too much. You were just with people who were too little with their love. And now you are not looking to be rescued. You are not waiting for someone to give you what you've already become. You are the calm you craved. You are the warmth you longed for. You are the home you kept searching for in others. So breathe. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're just building a new way, brick by brick, boundary by boundary, truth by truth. And with every step, you get closer to the love that doesn't require you to disappear.